Hello, you guys. Today, did I start it properly or did it start and it got cut off? Hello, you guys, just in case. Happy Father's Day. Happy Sunday. I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about what's been on my mind regarding the immigration conversation that is going on. I wanted to share my perspective because at least the people that I follow online, I don't really hear people that understand my perspective. So I hear a lot of people commenting on the situation and the violence that was happening in the beginning of the rioting in Los Angeles. But as far as people chiming in about, everyone is trying to make up their minds, trying to arrive at the truth. I like to think that we are all in search of the truth and that we don't want to believe false things, most of us are seeking the truth, including about immigrants, illegal immigration here in the United States. Depending on what part of the world you're in, you'll have different immigration problems or benefits, and so it's no different. I wonder if I need to leave. I think I will. I'm going to go park somewhere else because I don't want to make anyone feel like they have to wait for me to leave. I'm here at my church. We came in separate cars, so my husband is driving the kids to where we're going to celebrate him. So let me just drive somewhere else. I'm sure it's not a problem, but still. I'm going to find a spot right here. Nice spot. Alright, let's park right over here. So, as I was saying, there are a lot of conversations going on, and in the circles that I'm listening to, it's going to raise certain concerns for me that perhaps the circles that you are listening will be completely different concerns. And I think that what I've mostly been listening to is Americans. It seems Americans that it seems for the most part they don't really interact with a lot of illegal immigrants, and their concerns are more obviously like what their experience is here in this country and the negatives. And so when we have problems, we look to who to blame, and sometimes it is the case, and sometimes we're just looking for someone to put all of our anger at. And that's mostly what I wanted to say in this video, that I'm just going to talk, and if it doesn't apply to you, please don't take it like I'm speaking to you, but I'm just going to talk to whoever I am, like whoever I am talking to that fits the situation. I would say don't try to, and for myself as well, don't try to fit illegal immigration here in America into a little box, because it would be nicer and easier for me to think about the topic, for me to hold on to a position politically. It would just be so much easier if I can just cram this topic into this nice box, and there, like, I have solved the problem in my mind, and I could just, I don't have to think about it any further. I know the problem, I know the solution, and I know I'm right. It would be super nice to live in a world where we could do that, but because we live in a world with so many different people, and not just that, as Christians, we have higher standards when it comes to our way of interacting with people. Jesus doesn't just let us make up our own minds about how we are going to treat people, in particular like our enemies. So like, for example, in this country, I hear a lot of the tone, a lot of like, okay, these are our enemies. These illegal immigration is our enemy. They are invading. They are like trying to take over. They are trying to win elections by bringing all these people. And so it's the way that you become successful in, I cannot, like, it's such a hot day. I need to put the AC on. Sorry, it's gonna make noise. I'll try to lower it so it's not so loud. But the way that my observation has been that the way you make a lot of money in this world, in like podcasts, or you become popular in the political sphere, as a politician or whatever, is you first of all, you figure out your audience, and you just go hard. Like you choose what is the problem, who are we blaming. For example, illegal immigration, a lot, and then you don't talk about illegal immigration in a nuanced way or even a Christian way, but you just talk about it in terms of like, what do I get out of illegal immigration? What am I not getting? What are the drawbacks? And so because a few of these situations are happening, then I can create like almost a stereotype or an argument, a position. I can base my position that all deserve to be deported because of those that actually have done the terrible things in this country while here illegally. And I mean, it's very effective to get a lot of people to get angry and want to support you and all of that. When you frame an argument in that way, especially when you frame it as in, the one that troubles me the most is the ones that make it sound like you are not a Christian if you break the law. And nowhere do we find that in the Bible. We find encouragement, commands to obey our government, but also we see situations where you don't obey the government, and that is the Christian thing to do. So it's not black and white. It's not going to fit in the box so neatly. And I feel like that is where a lot of Christians are committing a problem, if you want to see it just like black and white like that. Some people want to interpret a certain Bible verse about immigration, and then and it would be wrong if also like pro illegal immigration people do the same thing about like using just one Bible verse and to justify like a lack of caution or a lack of consequences when it comes to, you know, immigrants that are causing problems in this country, like murders and things like that. So I wanted to say that the way that I have heard people talk about illegal immigration, I've been unfollowing a lot of people that I agreed with so much during the election. You know, like a lot of like even MAGA accounts, even though I wouldn't describe myself like fully MAGA or whatever, but there was a time when I really felt that I agreed with them, and then now that I'm just the things that they put out there is just something that I just don't want to be a part of. I don't want to be reading those things. I don't want to support those kinds of accounts and things like that. Even I thought that there was this one Christian commentators that they've been labeled as like progressive Christians because of their commentary on politics. And I heard one of their podcasts addressing the LA riots, and I was expecting more, but they mostly just talked about how why is there violence during like protests? Why are there riots? And they were more focused on the few people that were doing that, as far as I know. And instead of talking about like, let's talk about all the people that are not doing those things, what they're experiencing right now, what is the struggle that we're going through. Like, it's just something that I think I'm just saying, like, okay, it's just ignorance. And I know we use the word ignorance to insult people, but sometimes we truly are ignorant about something. For example, I'm not sure that I mean, I think I know, but I'm not 100% like experiencing how white people in America, how their experiences, how they feel, how they're processing things. And obviously we hear it because they have so many podcasts and they're sharing it. But I don't think most people are able to verbalize the experience of people like me that I was born here as a legal citizen through American law that said that that was the situation for me. And no, I don't know that they actually understand how difficult this time has been for people like me. Me in particular, just lately dealing with like guilt and shame, like, and as a Christian trying to process how do I think through this, just hearing a bunch of people saying that this is so wrong and people shouldn't be coming in illegally and things like that. It's like, how do I'm like an American here, and how do I deal with that? Like, do I just say full on, yeah, it was like, like some Christians want to say, yeah, if you broke the law, if you came in illegally, then how can a Christian do that? And so that puts like religious shame. And so I was thinking about that, and I felt like God reminded me, hey, our whole worldview of Christianity is that God came to save us from our sin. And so we as Christians, we don't get to be in a position of like, I'm completely right because of my citizenship status, my like, we don't get to live in a state where we feel we're better than other people, unless we want to be that Pharisee that he was supposedly praying and thanking God that he's not like those people. Even if it is true that, and as far as I know, like, sin is only something that God addresses like clearly in scripture, or that he convicts us truly that we are under sin or whatever. I've never gotten that sense of conviction. I've only recently been experiencing shame because of what other people are saying. But even if those people were right, God teaches us that there's redemption in this earth for people that have sinned severely, including the most well-known people in the Bible. God deals with the consequences, gives consequences, and yet forgives them and doesn't make them feel shame over what he punished them or gave them consequences for. and so we can live our lives as people with that are, we're experiencing these feelings of shame. We can set our eyes on God and say, no matter the wrong, especially like us, that some of us that we some of us were children, we didn't make the decision ourselves, or some of us that we thought we really, really wanted to become Americans, so we waited for the opportunity to become American citizens legally. I mean, even if there was that wrong in the beginning, there was a good intention in the heart to do things right, to bring restoration to what wasn't handled the best way. And here's another thing, that God can use bad things for his good. He can turn we were learning about Joseph today at church, and how God actually, he put Joseph in a situation that was bad several times, and God used it for his greater purposes. And for example, for us, my family in particular, my family was Catholic in Mexico, and my parents are grateful that they were able to come to this country and get plugged in with like a church that's I guess like a Protestant church, and they were able to develop this what feels like a closer relationship with God, and learn more about God and fellowship and be a part of a community and things like that. But to my mom in particular, she sensed, I almost feel bad sharing this, but I feel like I should share it a little bit. I would just hope that people are respectful if they want to comment on other people's experiences, especially my family's. With me, I'm okay if you just say things a certain way. I do my best to try to see where you're coming from, and see what things you are saying that is right and I agree with. But let's just say it this way. A lot of people feel that God led them to come to this country and to stay in this country. So when they were asking God, like, what should I do? Like, some will be like, well, my husband or the father of my child, whatever the situation, he's in America. And then that's the thing, like, okay, well, why are you going to leave behind your family or whatever? Why are you going to put your family in a situation that will lead your wife or whatever to have to enter, and do things in a way and live a life where you're like hiding pretty much. You're doing your best to not do anything that will get you in trouble by the law, but you might have had a better life if you would have just stayed in the country where you have all your rights and privileges and benefits. But anyway, some people were like, should I stay with all my family here, or should I go and be a family with my children's father? And so some women, for example, I choose to be a family and to follow my husband. And these are things that people have walked with the Lord, and they, in their conscience, they feel that God did tell them to go to this country. And so there isn't a sense of like sin, but there's a sense of, I obeyed God. And so that's the part where I'm like, don't try to squeeze it into a box, because for people, it's not like it's easy to say in retrospect that, oh, this was the right way to do it, or this was the wrong way. Someone brought to my attention that there had been certain amnesties and things like that. So people that were entering, they might have gotten the idea, okay, I'm going to enter legally, for example, and I'm going to overstay my visa, or maybe they're like, maybe I won't even have to overstay because maybe the government situation is going to change, and so there would be another amnesty. Or some people that came missed the amnesty by like a few months or by like a year, and so not everyone that comes into this country illegally, for example, or legally and stays illegally, not everyone you can't say what everyone's intentions were, motives of the heart. And then also I've been thinking a lot about like how people say that illegal immigrants are like leeches, that they're leeching off of American tax money. And I can understand, as an American citizen here, we pay our taxes. I understand, like when you don't have a lot of money, especially, and you have your own life to, your family, you're thinking about college, you're thinking about, well, can we afford to live in a nicer home, in a better neighborhood, things like that. And then you hear, oh no, like the government's going to charge me how much money, and where is this money going to, and so like all of those things, it needs to be fair, right? It needs to be like it needs to be fair, so that it's not something that is going to hurt someone else financially, right? I understand that, but the attitude of like calling people leeches and things like that, like in the Bible, the political right is not the way we should be. They're not our religious leaders, and we shouldn't live our lives and what we speak and what we feel and what we think. It shouldn't be like the Bible to us. We should judge what we are taking in, how we're thinking, always based on the Bible. And in the Bible, nowhere does it teach me to see someone else as a leech, and for me to feel greed. The Bible teaches me to be generous, and that my money, I'm just a steward of God. Everything that I have is God's, and so being led by God as well in situations like this. The Bible doesn't say love only legal citizens that are, in your city or whatever, in your country. God included neighbors, that includes illegal immigrants as well. And so our heart's posture should be one of love and what can I do? And sure, the government has its place to preserve, the peace, the safety of us, of the citizens. But like I said, if you can fit the topic of illegal immigration in a box, then you're wrong. There's something you haven't thought through yet, especially regarding your Christian worldview. There should be, sure, if you want to see things black and white, okay, but also don't leave out the benefits, because if you're only thinking, the negatives of illegal immigration, you're lying to yourself, because we as Americans, they're not just taking from us everything that illegal immigrants, and they're not all just not working and things like that. We all know that. We see people on the street like selling little things, cook food. I mean, stop stereotyping a certain type of person is what I'm saying. It's not Christian for us to do that. We don't think in terms of stereotypes. We think in terms of like God's image bearers. Okay, we are all different. We all have our different struggles. Okay, but yeah, like we benefit a lot, and our country has benefited a lot from cheap labor, and so anyway, if you're going to say that the negatives, you're going to think about the negatives of illegal immigration, make sure that you also are fair and you say, but also the benefits, we have benefited as well. And people have benefited as well in coming to know God more. He can use a negative thing and turn it into a positive thing for him, for his kingdom. And God can use illegal immigrants also to share the gospel to other people, which is the most important thing anyway, right? When we think like we're not going to take any of our possessions to heaven. God's plan is greater, and God is more concerned with the souls of people. So anyway, I wanted to share that, and I'm trying to think what was the other thing. I think that's the main thing that I wanted to share. I wrote some notes here about the sermon today. Yeah, so like we were learning about Joseph, and how Joseph he had a dream, and God was sharing what God was going to do in Joseph's life, but also what was going to happen, to him in his family, like the way the family, because ultimately when the dream came true in his life, his brothers were bowing down to him because Joseph was now the second in charge in Egypt. But why were they bowing down? Because they were begging for their lives pretty much. When their father would die, they thought maybe he would take revenge because they sold him into slavery, because they were hateful of him. They were jealous that his father loved him more. And so, but the dream before all of this happened was that they were bowing down. And so like today I was like, well, what if it wasn't just that God was telling him about the power that God was going to give to him, but that he was also warning him that, hey, there was this situation within the family that was going to happen to him. And so Joseph went through a lot of struggles, a lot of wrong happened to him, and immigrant sort of, right, like forced slave into Egypt, and God blessed him there. God used him for his purposes to bless his people, Israel, his people, so that they wouldn't die because of the what was it called, that there wasn't going to be like scarcity, I guess is what you would say. And God used Joseph. He put him through a lot of terrible situations, but eventually God put him in a position of power. And maybe a lot of us would be tempted to care more about our legacy here on earth. I want people to remember how God brought me from a terrible place, and he raised me to the second most powerful man, and God is good, or whatever. And so Joseph wasn't more concerned about his legacy. He said, when God, in other words, when God comes through with his promise that he's going to take his people to the promised land, take my bones. And he cared more about God's plan than his own plan. And so he's like, I'm not, in other words, I thought he didn't care about his prestige, his position of power. He didn't want to be remembered like here. He could have, I don't know, he could have made himself a very important burial or whatever, to be remembered forever as such a powerful man, immigrant that rose to power or whatever. But instead, he was committed to, he knew he was just a part of God's plan, of God's story, that there was a bigger story. And in the same sense, we are also in a bigger plan. We are in a bigger story, and God knows where people need to be and for whatever his purposes are. So however we want to think in terms of illegal immigration, remember the bigger story, and that God is orchestrating people's lives. So that's what I want to share. I'm glad that God allowed me to be an American, because he could have let me just grow up, in Mexico. Maybe I would have become a Catholic. I don't know what my life would have been. I don't know, but I'm glad that God could use my parents' life to raise me up so that I can know him, which is the most important thing I've needed in my life. and I'm glad that I'm able to share that faith with my kids as well here in this country, going to, you know, great churches here, and teaching my kids to be proud Americans, to be good citizens, and so forth. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for listening to this video. If you liked this video, please give me a like so that more people can hear about it. And if you'd like to join my monthly newsletter, please go to my website, susanmorales.org, and you can sign up there. Bye guys.